Mr. Serrato is the DA.
Sir.
All right, let's do it. Let's get Ms. Fung, please.
Email.
What's the status of the 1001.36 on this one?
Your Honor, we have all the medical records that suggest that she has suffered from qualifying, disabilities. However, we do not have a plan in place to make sure that she takes her medication, which is the problem. Originally, when she first had the psychosis back in February of 23, what the doctors recommended was that she take her medication, and they were gonna have outpatient services available to monitor that.
Mhm.
The last report that we got suggests that if she doesn't take her medication, then she might be a danger to others, but there's no plan in place for anyone to monitor her taking her medications.
You know, and funny, I reviewed this and I thought the same thing.
Yeah,
I'm-
so-
Yeah,
What we're going to do today, though, with the court's permission, is we're going to waive the preliminary examination. We still want to proceed with not with our motion today, because we're going to work on developing a plan where someone will be monitoring her medications. However, we also, I think, wasn't it also on for OR review? Because we had started we had asked for an OR, and the court had talked about having her husband here. So if the court had
Oh.
any questions of
yeah,
him,
there's a bail review. But is he here?
yes, he is
But
here.
I don't understand, because you said nobody's gonna ensure that she takes the meds, but you said that you have somebody here? That doesn't make sense.
For the OR, and her husband is prepared to take responsibility for that, for making sure that she takes her medication, but I'm not sure that that would be sufficient for the court. I thought there had to
Yeah.
be some medical provider that would be monitoring.
Right,
Although he has been in touch with BHRS, and they told him if she comes down there, they will treat her, and he's prepared to do that as well.
okay, so we'll call it on the record, and then Mr. Serrato can give me his position too. All right, let's call Kimberly Arnetta Fung, CR 23-13689. Ms. Fung is present in custody with Mr. Martinez. Mr. Serrato is here for the people. This is on for preliminary hearing. Mr. Martinez.
Your Honor, at this time, we are going to waive the preliminary hearing today.
Okay.
We're prepared to proceed to arraignment on information on the top charges she currently has.
Okay.
I advised Mr. Serrato that was our intention.
Oh, I
However, we are
wasn't
not
aware.
waiving or withdrawing our motion under
Okay,
the mental health diversion motion that we had previously filed.
all right.
And then we were going to be asked permission to again argue for her release on her own recognizance.
Okay. Okay, so ma'am, before I allow you to waive the preliminary hearing, I want to advise you of your constitutional rights. You do have a constitutional right to the preliminary hearing, and that would concern all any enhancements or the charges themselves. You have the right to be represented by an attorney at all stages of the proceedings. You have the right to a speedy and public jury trial, at which time the prosecution, well, excuse me, we're not even talking about the jury trial. At the preliminary hearing, let me tell you about your rights. You, of course, have the right to an attorney. You also have the right to confront and cross-examine witnesses against you, which means you have the right to see, hear, and through your attorney, question any witnesses testifying against you. You have a right to present evidence and have the court issue subpoenas to bring to court witnesses and evidence favorable to you and at no cost to you. You have a right to testify on your own behalf or remain silent and not incriminate yourself, and have the DA prove the case if they can beyond a reasonable doubt. So I want to make sure that you understand each of these rights. Yes? And because if you're going to waive your right to a preliminary hearing, you're gonna be giving up these rights as to all the charges. Count 1, 2, 3, and 4, which are all charges of attempted arson of a structure or inhabited property, or in the cases of count 2 and 3, it looks like cars. And in count 4, actually in count 4 also. So count 1 is attempted arson of a house or a residence, 321 Summer Flocks Lane in Patterson. Count 2 concerns attempted arson of a GMC Yukon. Count 3 of an Audi sedan. And count 4 of a GMC Sierra Denali. And all cases are alleged to have occurred on December 7th of 2023, all these felonies. So do you understand your rights?
Yes.
Yes, okay. And the people are wishing to waive this preliminary hearing too, Mr. Serrato?
Yes, Your Honor, we also waive our right to a preliminary examination.
Mr. Martinez, anything else you'd like to say concerning the waiver?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, so I'm gonna find that the defendant, Ms. Fung, has personally and through her attorney has waived her right to preliminary examination, and you do consent to her waiving it, correct?
Yes, and for the record, Your Honor, before court, before we sat down, I had gone back and I spoken to her about waiving the preliminary examination, the reasons for it, and the rights she would be giving up.
Okay, so Mr. Martinez joins in her waiver of the preliminary examination. Mr. Serrato has consented to the waiver. It is ordered that the defendant be held to answer to the complaint on file. And that is counts 1 through 4. I'll note there are circumstances in aggravation, but those don't apply to the preliminary hearing. All 4 of the counts happened on December 7th of 2023. All are charges of 664/451 per NB, attempted arson. The first one concerns 321 Summer Flocks Lane in Patterson. Count 2 is GMC Yukon. Count 3 is an Audi sedan, and count 4 concerns a GMC Sierra Denali. So we'll show that the defendant has waived her right to preliminary hearing. At this point, should we put it over, Mr. Serrato, or I suppose we could arraign her at this point, but I think the people probably want to file an information.
Yes, Your Honor, we prefer to file a separate information.
And the people will not be adding any counts. Okay, so Mr. Martinez. Anything else?
No, Your Honor, in due course.
Okay, so we'll set this 2 weeks, which is October 21 at 8:30 in this department.
Judge.
Yeah? Okay. All right. And is time remains waived? Or I guess it's no.
Your
We'll
Honor,
put it over for
we'll
information.
take that up at the arraignment.
Okay,
It's gonna be back here in this department anyway.
Yeah,
is that
yeah.
correct? Yes. And Your
Okay.
Honor, again, we would like to address the issue of her
Okay.
status. We're asking for an OR release.
I do show this was on bail or OR review for their bail review for this week. Okay, we can begin with the bail hearing then at this point. She has just been held to answer. Her bail is currently at 525,000. I assume that's based on the charges.
I believe so.
Yeah, let's see. So, Mr. Serrano, based on these 4 counts, each one carries oh, wait a minute. I'm sorry, I want to clarify something. Count 1 is an attempted 451 paren B as in boy. Counts 2, 3, and 4 are 451 paren D as in David. So I want to make that clear. The counts 2, 3, and 4 are a little different than count 1. I don't know if I specified that as part of the preliminary hearing waiver. Having that in mind,
I
Yes,
think
I-
the court did.
Did I say it
differentiate
correctly?
Between each count, one was
Okay.
the residential
Okay,
and 3 were vehicles.
okay, because one carries a bail schedule of 300,000. 2, 3, and 4 are 75,000 each. That's how we got to 525 as bail, it looks like.
Okay.
Okay. Did all these items belong to different people, the cars and the house, or was it all one person's property?
One family.
Yes.
All right, so go ahead. You had something you wanted to say, Mr. Martinez.
Yes, you are.
Okay.
All of the activity surrounding this incident stemmed from her delusions that she was suffering at the time of the incident. This was not the first time something like this had happened. The first time that this happened was in February of 23, where she suffered the same type of delusions. She was prescribed medications which she didn't take. However, the delusions that she was suffering were that her neighbors were out to get her. She thought that they were gonna try to kill her. She ended up attempting suicide. And then this incident happened in December, again, where she thought the neighbors were out to hurt her. And then she came back and committed these acts while she was suffering from the delusions. As the court may be aware of from the prior evaluations that have been done on Ms. Fong, she was in a state of mind where she could not separate her delusions from reality. And that caused her to be in fear and to take the actions that she did, not because anyone had done anything to her, but because of the delusions that she was suffering from made her think that that was a reality. Now, after having been in custody for the last 10, she has been prescribed medication that take away.
All right, we'll see you, Dre. So no more Los Banos for you?
Mr. Bradford, can you mute it? Thank
Oh.
you. Thank you.
So now after being in custody for 10 months and being evaluated and assessed by different local psychologists, they have prescribed medication that seems to take care of the problems that she was having. She's no longer suffering from delusions based on the last report that we got. And with taking care of that problem, I think addresses the issue of safety concerns for the public. All of them seem to suggest that unless she takes her medications, the danger could reoccur. So it's a maximum importance that she continue to take her medications, not only to remain competent to stand trial, but also so that she's not a danger to herself or to others. Her husband is in court today. He is prepared to take responsibility for taking her over to BHRS. He's already talked to them about what they could do for her, and they're advising him, and he can speak to that as to exactly what he's been told by BHRS. And that's what we intend to do, have her released into his custody, and then he's gonna transport her over to BHRS so that they can monitor her prescribed medication intake. That's what has to be done to make sure that this doesn't happen again.
So she would be living at BHRS or at home?
I think that she would be just assessed at BHRS, and they would create a plan for them to monitor her medications. But with her being in custody, they're not gonna create a plan for her being in custody. But if he goes over there, if he's a walk-in, then they will address that issue and they will create a plan.
I
And
thought you were coming up with a plan for the 1,001.36 anyway. Would that involve BHRS or who's that gonna involve?
We've called them and they said that she has to be brought in. We can't bring her in, but if she's released to her husband, he can take her there. And again, he's been in touch with them about bringing her over for an assessment, and maybe he could explain it better. Mr. Fung?
Yeah.
Okay, come on forward, sir.
Mr. Fung, you've been to BHRS, is that correct?
I have contacted actually the county and BHRS, yes, correct.
And have you explored with them a treatment plan for Ms. Fung?
Yes,
And what was the treatment plan that you discussed with them?
well, Your Honor, every place as far as the outpatient therapy, they require the person, the individual to be actually walked into the facility, the medical facility, they won't do nothing. I contacted actually BHRS, the county welfare, when this happened, maybe 7 months ago. And they stated the same thing. They said that does the court not know that the legalities or what to do in these steps? I was like, I'm not even an attorney to explain that. Well, the only way she's able to get insurance is that she can't be incarcerated. Right? Because she's technically a homeless person down here. Because she doesn't reside here. We reside in Washington State, Your Honor. And that's part of the issue. But they did, I think, when I spoke to the representative, it's actually the welfare places across the detention center in Stanislaus County too. And so they told me you could take her there and apply, and then she could actually get assessed into the facility itself. And so that way that she would be able to get treatment.
Okay, Mr. Sarda, do you have questions for Mr. Fung?
I don't, Your Honor.
So this was committed in December of 23. How did it even come to be? Mr. Fung, were you here? Well, I probably shouldn't be asking that.
I've been here many times, Your Honor.
No, so I mean, if you live in, Mr. Martinez, I'm confused. If they live in Washington, somehow this happened here, somehow she was charged with an offense here, but I don't want to.
Neighbors, Judge.
Oh, okay.
We resided here before, Your Honor. Yeah, we
Oh, I see.
moved to Washington State where my family's from.
Got it.
That's why
Okay.
we relocated back home when
All
we were having these issues with her health. And then so
So you moved after she was arrested?
we moved before she was arrested, Your Honor.
Oh, okay.
Yes, we moved before, not after.
It had actually made two moves because she suffered the same kind of activity in Stockton back in 23. And she was experiencing delusions with the neighbor that they had at that time. So they Mr. Fung moved to Patterson to get away from that neighbor. And then she started having the same type of delusions with the new neighbor. So then they moved again to be with his family so they could have some help and
Support.
All right. Mr. Serrano, what are your objections?
We're opposed to the release, Your Honor. There's been previous motions to reduce the bail or for OR. The court's denied it. Certainly doesn't mean we can't hear it again. However, there's certainly mental health issues at play here, but there's also a level of sophistication that is somewhat alarming. And then the gravity, coupled with the gravity of the offense. Again, these are strike charges. These are 1275C charges, which require unusual circumstances for the court to deviate from below the bail schedule. Here, Ms. Fung and her husband had lived in Patterson. They left Patterson. They moved to Washington State. She flew back to California the day before this incident. This incident took place on December the 7th of 2023. The day before, she went to a Party City store in Modesto to purchase a mask she used to conceal her face during this incident. She already, in that same day, she went over to the victim's house and spray painted some graffiti derogatory towards them around their house as well. Then the next day, and she's here in California in a hotel room. She went on December the 7th. She went to Walmart, it's according to her own admission, to purchase new clothing so that her former neighbor would not be able to identify her when she went to his house. She wanted to confront him. She bought a gas can. She also had a lighter as well. She went to her former neighbor's house, drove by multiple times in an effort to scout to see if anybody was around, if anybody would see her. She finally went back feeling that it was safe to go. She put on the clothes that she had purchased to disguise herself. She covered her vehicle's license plate. She put drapes on her car as well to kind of cover the windows and hide her for a little bit. She left the car. She walked up to the front door, and then on the victim's ring video, she grabs a gas can. She walks towards the residence. She throws gasoline on the cars. She walks to the front door. She throws gasoline on the front door. And at that point, there were multiple people inside the house. And Gustavo Camacho, who's one of the homeowners, he came out and stopped her.
What's their relationship, her relationship to the victim's house and the victim?
Former neighbors.
Okay,
And then she had some thoughts that he in the past had abused her or done something, apparently all. I think even by Mr. Martinez's admission, and I would agree with him, it's delusions, but nevertheless, pretty alarming behavior. She traveled all the way from Washington State, engaged in approximately 2 days of planning, took efforts to disguise herself, and then doused the front of their house and their vehicles with gasoline.
and her husband, you were with her on that trip
No.
here? Oh, okay, thank you.
That's what
Not
they're
to the
doing.
house, but on the,
Yeah, she
visit.
left Washington State alone without him.
okay, got it.
Believe that she came here for the death of an acquaintance, a very close friend of hers. Her
Okay.
mother had passed away and she came alone for that. And then she was overcome with her delusions while she was here. There were triggers that they talk about in the different psychological examinations. There are things that could trigger these panic attacks based on the delusions that she was suffering. And all of this happened because of the delusions, which are now being treated with the proper medication. She's been taking that medication ever since she's been in custody, and they've analyzed her again, and they've come to find out that the medication is working. Now, and when they talk to her about the medication, she seems to think that that makes her sleep better. Doesn't realize that it's actually a psychotic medication, but nonetheless, she's taking everything that they ask her to take. And so long as she takes that medication, and that's why it's so important that she be monitored.
Right.
Because as long as she's monitored and as long as she's taking that medication, she's okay. She doesn't suffer from these
Right.
delusions that cause her to feel threatened by her neighbors.
So I think that we're getting into the plan area of this. I think one of the things that we discussed, I don't remember if it was on the record or off the record, but we were not going to proceed on the 1001.36 today because there's not a plan yet in place to ensure and monitor that she's taking the medications. You have now asked me during the bail hearing to accept that her husband will be this person as if he were the plan, not for 1001.36 purposes, but for purposes of releasing her on her OR.
That's just so that she can go to the place where they're going to put a plan into place, Judge. She's not just going to be released. The whole purpose of releasing her to her husband is so that he can take her to the
Right.
the
The-
HRS where they can do a plan for her to be monitored.
Okay.
He's not suggesting that he's gonna be the one that makes sure, but he's gonna transfer her from jail to the program.
But that would be an outpatient program, not an inpatient program, even if they accepted her, which they haven't yet.
And all the records that I've reviewed, there's been a suggestion that could be either an inpatient or
Yeah.
outpatient.
It would be nice to have that set up, but I know it's a chicken and egg scenario because he's talking about they won't do anything without her being in custody. So I
Right.
get it. Okay, anything else, Mr. Serrato?
No, you're.
Okay, anything else submitted? Okay. Yeah, I think at this point, the court, given the recitation of facts that Mr. Serrato gave, this was a pretty sophisticated crime. I don't think the court has any choice but to determine this defendant is a danger to public safety or a victim, given what happened in this crime. I haven't heard yet the 1001.36 motion to know all the circumstances, whether it affected her or her mental condition affected her or not, or any sort of DSM condition. But it was clearly very high sophistication, this crime, what it involved based on all the details that Mr. Serrato just gave at this point. And those details certainly, when the defendant waives the preliminary hearing, the court doesn't get to hear all that. But when Mr. Serrato recites it all, there were a lot of details. So the court certainly has its concern. Is the defendant safe to release with conditions? Well, at the time, apparently she came out here, Mr. Martinez says, for a perfectly legitimate condition, but yet all this happened during that period and husband was not monitoring her. Maybe he didn't need to come out here because it wasn't his friend or whatever the occasion was, but I certainly have concerns about his ability to monitor her. So I'm not going to find that there are any restrictions necessarily that can prevent her from any sort of dangerous conduct. The other thing that has to go into my decision is I was looking at the report from the Certificate of Restorations filed on August 30th, 2024. And what the lead or what the psychologist cites in the report is that Ms. Fung does not believe that she has ever been mentally ill, but he then guessed that she has a mental illness of delusions. And she did not appear convinced. She believed that the medications were prescribed merely for depression. She was uncertain if she actually needed it. Then later he says, given the nature of her mental illness, she may decompensate from current levels of functioning if she discontinues the medication and may once again become incompetent to stand trial as a result. It seems that we have her at a good point right now, and ensuring that she continues to take her medication is paramount in this case. And to send her to a different state with her husband and not have a plan in place to this court seems pretty dangerous. So at this time, I'm going to find that this defendant is a danger to public safety and she is not safe to release with conditions, given she doesn't seem to think she necessarily needs these medications. I don't know how easy she would be to convince by her husband that she does, but to send her to another state without a plan of monitoring in place to this court just doesn't seem safe. So I'm going to deny the motion at this time and find clear and convincing evidence there is no less restrictive condition sufficient. I'm going to leave the bail what it is at $525,000. Do you want to come back for a hearing on the 1001.36, Mr. Martinez?
We're still
How
going-
long? But I want to give you enough time to get a decent plan in place. So
Right,
you
so,
tell me.
why don't we do this? Why don't we come back for the arraignment and we'll set it at that time?
All right. I'll see you October 21 then at 8:30 in this department. Sir, thank you for coming here and telling the court your testimony.
I mean, I don't,
It's-
I guess.
it's okay.
That's how big agreement plan.
I'm going to leave that to you and Mr. Martinez. I can't give you advice. I'm not allowed to. No, the court is not allowed to offer advice. So I'll give it to Mr. Martinez. Oh, Mr. Tao and Mr. Bradford. I do. Is it bothering you? Is that better? Oh, I didn't. Oh, so were they not able to hear me? Mr. Okay, Mr. Reed, could you understand me?
Yeah. You can.
What was that, Your Honor?
Did you guys all understand what I said, or was the fan too much? Okay. All right. Okay.